A kidnapper kept his victims hidden for years. Then a K9 found something in the walls that changed everything. In the shadows of a small town, evil lurked. For years, the community had been haunted by a series of disappearances. Young lives snatched away without a trace. Whispers of a faceless predator spread like wildfire, but no one dared to speak his name aloud. They called him the Phantom, a ghostly figure who seemed to vanish into thin air, leaving behind nothing but shattered families and unanswered questions. Detective Evelyn Carter stood at the edge of the abandoned estate, her eyes fixed on the decaying structure that loomed before her. The Phantom's lair. She had followed the trail of clues to this desolate corner of town, determined to unravel the mystery that had haunted her for far too long. Beside her, Shadow, her loyal K9 partner, whined softly, sensing the weight of the moment. Evelyn reached down and scratched behind his ears, drawing strength from his unwavering presence. Together, they had faced countless challenges, but none as daunting as the one that lay ahead. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Evelyn squared her shoulders and stepped forward, ready to confront the darkness that awaited her. She knew the risks, but she also knew that the missing children needed her. Their families needed closure, and the town needed to heal. With each step, Evelyn felt the weight of her duty pressing down on her. She had sworn an oath to protect and serve, to bring justice to those who had been wronged. And she would not rest until the Phantom was brought to light, his secrets laid bare for all to see. Little did she know, as she crossed the threshold into the estate, that her journey was only just beginning, that the battle she was about to wage would test her courage, her resolve, and her very belief in the power of good over evil. But Evelyn Carter was not one to back down from a fight. And as she descended into the heart of darkness, she carried with her a single, unbreakable promise, that she would bring the missing children home, no matter the cost. Vincent Crowe surveyed his domain, a cruel smile playing at the corners of his lips. From the shadows of the abandoned estate, he watched as the detective and her faithful companion inched closer to his lair. He had been expecting them, anticipating the moment when his twisted game would begin. For years, Crowe had operated in the shadows, preying on the innocent with impunity. He reveled in the fear he inspired, the power he held over the town. With each disappearance, he grew bolder, more confident in his ability to evade capture. But now, as he watched the determined figure of Evelyn Carter approach, he felt a flicker of unease. There was something different about this detective, something that set her apart from the others who had tried and failed to bring him to justice. Crowe pushed the thought aside, his eyes glinting with malice. He had prepared for this moment, laid his traps and set his snares. He would break her, just as he had broken all the others. As he retreated deeper into the bowels of the estate, Crowe's mind wandered to his captives. The children he had stolen away, the young lives he held in his grasp. They were his trophies, his proof of dominance over a world that had once shunned him. And yet, even as he reveled in his twisted victories, Crowe couldn't shake the feeling that his reign was coming to an end, that the detective and her dog were more than just another challenge to be overcome. He pushed the thought aside once more, his grip tightening on the rusted keys that jangled at his side. He would not be bested, not by Evelyn Carter or anyone else. This was his world, his kingdom of shadows, and he would defend it to the bitter end. With a final glance at the approaching figures, Vincent Crowe turned and melted into the darkness, ready to unleash his most terrifying game yet. Evelyn and Shadow moved cautiously through the abandoned estate, their senses heightened to every creak and groan of the decaying structure. The air was thick with the stench of neglect and something far more sinister, a pervasive sense of evil that seemed to seep from the very walls. As they navigated the twisting corridors and crumbling rooms, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She knew that somewhere in the depths of this labyrinthine lair, Vincent Crowe was waiting, biding his time until the moment was right to strike. Suddenly, Shadow froze, his ears pricked and his body tense. Evelyn followed his gaze to a small, innocuous door set into the wall, almost hidden by years of grime and decay. Her heart raced as she realized what lay beyond. the chilling clue that had led her to this place, the piece of the puzzle that could finally bring an end to Crow's reign of terror. With trembling hands, Evelyn reached out and grasped the rusted handle. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever horrors lay beyond, and pushed the door open. What she saw inside made her blood run cold. The room was small and dimly lit, but even in the faint light, Evelyn could make out the evidence of Crow's depravity. Photographs of his victims lined the walls, their young faces frozen in expressions of fear and despair. Piles of clothing and personal effects lay scattered across the floor, a testament to the lives he had stolen away. But it was the map that drew Evelyn's eye, a crudely drawn diagram that seemed to depict the very bowels of the estate. And there, marked with a single chilling X, was a room that sent shivers down her spine. Evelyn's mind raced as she realized the full extent of what they had stumbled upon. This was more than just a clue. It was a roadmap to the heart of Crow's dark world, a path that could lead them to the missing children. With renewed determination, Evelyn turned to Shadow, her eyes blazing with a fierce resolve. They had come too far to turn back now, too close to the truth to let Crow slip away once more. Together, they set off deeper into the estate, following the map's twisted path. And as they moved through the shadows, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap, that Crow was waiting for them, ready to unleash his most terrifying game yet. As Evelyn and Shadow made their way deeper into the bowels of the estate, the town beyond its walls was in turmoil. News of the detective's discovery had spread like wildfire, reigniting the fear and despair that had gripped the community for so long. In the town square, a crowd had gathered, their faces etched with worry and their voices raised in a chorus of anger and frustration. For years, they had lived under the shadow of Vincent Crow, haunted by the knowledge that their children were not safe, that a monster lurked in their midst. But now, as they stood together in the fading light, a new emotion began to take hold. Hope. Hope that Evelyn and Shadow would succeed where others had failed, that the missing children would be found and brought home at last. Among the crowd, a woman stood apart, her eyes fixed on the horizon as if searching for a sign. Her name was Sarah, and her daughter had been one of the first to disappear, vanishing from her bed in the middle of the night. For years, Sarah had been a ghost, moving through life in a haze of grief and despair. But now, as she stood among her neighbors, she felt a flicker of something long forgotten. Strength. The strength to fight, to believe, to hold on to hope even in the darkest of times. Beside her, an old man placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. His name was Harold, and he had lived in the town longer than anyone could remember. He had seen the community weather countless storms, had watched as hope gave way to fear and despair. But now, as he looked out at the sea of faces before him, Harold felt a stirring in his soul. He knew that this was a turning point, a moment that would define the town for generations to come. With a voice that trembled with emotion, Harold began to speak. He spoke of the power of unity, of the strength that comes from standing together in the face of evil. He spoke of the courage of Evelyn and Shadow, of the sacrifices they were making to bring the missing children home. And as he spoke, the crowd began to swell, their voices rising in a chorus of hope and determination. They knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, that there would be setbacks and moments of doubt. But they also knew that they were not alone, that in the face of darkness, there was still light, that in the midst of despair, there was still hope. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the shadows lengthened, the town stood united, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They had placed their faith in Evelyn and Shadow, in the power of courage and perseverance. And they knew that no matter what horrors Vincent Crow had in store, they would not rest until their children were safe, until justice had been served, and until the shadow of fear had been lifted from their town once and for all. Evelyn and Shadow moved through the twisted corridors of the estate, their hearts pounding and their senses on high alert. The map they had discovered was proving to be both a blessing and a curse, leading them deeper into the heart of Crow's lair, but also filling them with a growing sense of unease. As they turned a corner, Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. Before them lay a long, narrow hallway, its walls lined with doors that seemed to stretch on forever. And there, at the very end, was the room marked with the chilling X, the place where Crow's most heinous secrets were hidden. Evelyn's mind raced as she considered their options. They could turn back, retrace their steps, and call for backup. But she knew that every moment they delayed was another moment that the missing children remained in Crow's clutches. With a deep breath, Evelyn signaled to Shadow, and together they moved forward, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. As they drew closer to the door, Evelyn's heart began to race, her palms slick with sweat. Suddenly, a sound rang out from behind one of the closed doors, a soft, muffled cry that made Evelyn's blood run cold. She froze, her hand hovering over her weapon. As Shadow's ears pricked up, his body tense and alert. For a moment they stood in silence, listening, waiting. And then, the sound came again, louder this time, more urgent. Without hesitation, Evelyn burst through the door, her gun drawn and her eyes scanning the room beyond. What she saw made her heart stop. There, huddled in the corner, was a small, trembling figure, a child no more than 6 years old. Her face was streaked with tears, her body bruised and battered. But in her eyes, Evelyn saw a flicker of hope, a desperate plea for help. At that moment, everything else fell away. The fear, the uncertainty, the weight of the task before them. All that mattered was the child, the innocent life that had been stolen away by a monster. Evelyn holstered her gun and rushed forward, gathering the girl in her arms. She whispered words of comfort, promises that everything would be all right, that she was safe now. But even as she held the child close, Evelyn knew that their fight was far from over. This was just one life, one small victory in a war that had only just begun. With a heavy heart, Evelyn lifted the girl into her arms and turned to face the door once more. She knew that beyond that threshold lay more horrors, more children in need of saving. But she also knew that she was not alone, that Shadow was by her side, that the town was behind her, that hope and courage would guide them through the darkness. And so, with a deep breath and a steely resolve, Evelyn stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For the missing children, for the town, and for the future that hung in the balance. As Evelyn emerged from the estate with the rescued child in her arms, the town erupted in a chorus of joy and relief. Parents rushed forward, tears streaming down their faces as they embraced their lost sons and daughters, whispering words of love and comfort. But amidst the celebration, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that their fight was far from over. She knew that Vincent Crow was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for his moment to strike. And she was right. Even as the town rejoiced, Crow was watching from afar, his eyes narrowed and his mind churning with dark thoughts. He had underestimated the detective, had allowed her to slip through his grasp and steal away his prize. But he would not make the same mistake twice. He had other plans, other children hidden away in the depths of his lair, and he would stop at nothing to keep them under his control. As the days turned into weeks, Evelyn and Shadow worked tirelessly to uncover the full extent of Crow's crimes. They interviewed witnesses, pored over evidence, and followed every lead, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. And slowly but surely, the pieces began to fall into place. They discovered other hideouts, other secret rooms where Crow had kept his victims. They found journals and photographs, sickening trophies of his twisted deeds. But even as they made progress, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. She knew that Crow was growing more desperate, more erratic with each passing day. And then, just when they thought they had him cornered, Crow vanished. It was as if he had simply disappeared into thin air, leaving behind no trace of his whereabouts. For weeks, the town held its breath, waiting for news, for some sign that the nightmare was finally over. But as the days stretched on with no word, hope began to fade, replaced by a creeping sense of dread. Evelyn refused to give up. She knew that Crow was out there somewhere, plotting his next move, and she was determined to find him, to bring him to justice once and for all. But even as she redoubled her efforts, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that Crow was always one step ahead, that he was toying with her, leading her on a twisted game of cat and mouse. And then, just when she thought all hope was lost, a breakthrough. A tip from an unlikely source. A whisper of a lead that seemed too good to be true. But Evelyn knew that she had to follow it, no matter where it led. And so, with Shadow by her side and the town at her back, she set off once more, ready to face whatever horrors lay ahead. For the missing children, for the town, and for the future that hung in the balance, Evelyn would not rest until Vincent Crow was brought to justice, until the shadow of fear was lifted from their community once and for all. As Evelyn and Shadow raced towards the location revealed by their informant, a sense of anticipation hung heavy in the air. They had been chasing leads for weeks, following every whisper and rumor in the hopes of uncovering Crow's whereabouts. And now, finally, they had a solid lead. A remote cabin, hidden deep in the woods on the outskirts of town. A place where Crow had been spotted, where he was rumored to be holding his remaining captives. Evelyn's heart raced as they drew closer, her mind whirling with the possibilities of what they might find. She knew that Crow was cunning, that he would not go down without a fight. But she also knew that they had no choice, that the lives of the missing children hung in the balance, that every moment they delayed was another moment that Crow had to slip away once more. As they pulled up to the cabin, Evelyn and Shadow moved with practiced precision. They surrounded the building, weapons drawn and senses on high alert. And then, with a nod from Evelyn, they burst through the door, ready for whatever lay beyond. What they found inside was a scene of unimaginable horror. Children, pale and trembling, huddled in corners and chained to walls. Evelyn and Shadow moved quickly, their training taking over as they secured the cabin and called for backup. The children were frightened and weak, but alive. Paramedics arrived on the scene, tending to their immediate needs while Evelyn gently coaxed them to share any information they had on Crow's whereabouts. Piece by piece, a picture began to emerge. Whispers of a hidden room beneath the cabin, a final stronghold where Crow had retreated. Evelyn's heart raced at the thought of confronting him at last, but she steadied herself, focusing on the task at hand. With the children safely in the care of the paramedics, Evelyn and Shadow descended into the depths of the cabin, following the winding path that led to Crow's hidden lair. The air grew thick and heavy, the darkness pressing in from all sides. And then they heard it, a low, menacing laugh that echoed through the shadows. Vincent Crow stepped into the light, his eyes gleaming with malice and his face twisted into a sneer. Well, Detective Carter," he drawled, his voice dripping with disdain. "I must admit, I underestimated you. But no matter, you're too late. The game is already won." Evelyn's grip tightened on her weapon, her eyes narrowing as she stared down the monster before her. "It's over, Crow," she said, her voice steady and clear. "You've lost. The children are safe, and you're going to pay for your crimes." But Crow only laughed, a sound that chilled Evelyn to the bone. "Oh, Detective," he said, shaking his head, "you have no idea what you're up against. I am the master of this game, and I always win." With a sudden, violent motion, Crow lunged forward, a glint of metal flashing in his hand. Evelyn reacted on instinct, her training taking over as she dodged the blow and countered with a strike of her own. The battle was fierce and brutal, a dance of life and death in the shadows of the hidden room. But Evelyn was relentless, driven by a fierce determination to bring Crow to justice, to end his reign of terror once and for all. And then, with a final, desperate lunge, she had him. Crow lay pinned beneath her, his face contorted with rage and desperation. "It's over," Evelyn said, her voice trembling with exhaustion and emotion. "You've lost." As the sound of sirens filled the air and backup flooded the room, Evelyn felt a wave of relief wash over her. It was done. The monster had been defeated, and the children were safe. But even as she watched Crow being led away in handcuffs, Evelyn knew that their work was far from over. The town had been shaken to its core, the scars of Crow's crimes running deep. It would take time to heal, to rebuild what had been lost. But Evelyn knew that they would rise to the challenge, that the strength and resilience of the community would see them through, no matter what lay ahead. In the days that followed Crow's capture, the town began to heal. Families were reunited, tears of joy and relief mingling with the pain of what had been endured. The missing children, though scarred by their ordeal, found solace in the love and support of their community. Evelyn and Shadow became heroes, their names spoken with reverence and gratitude. But for Evelyn, the true heroes were the survivors, the brave souls who had endured the unimaginable and emerged stronger for it. She spent long hours with them, listening to their stories, offering comfort and support. And slowly but surely, she watched as they began to heal, as the light returned to their eyes and the weight of their trauma began to lift. But even as the town celebrated, Evelyn knew that their work was far from over. Crow's trial loomed on the horizon, a final reckoning for the monster who had terrorized them for so long. And so, she threw herself into the case, working tirelessly to build an airtight prosecution. She pored over evidence, interviewed witnesses, and pieced together the full extent of Crow's crimes. It was a daunting task, a battle against the very darkness that had consumed their town. But Evelyn was determined to see it through, to ensure that justice was served and that Crow would never again pose a threat to the innocent. As the trial approached, tensions in the town began to rise once more. Old wounds were reopened, painful memories dragged to the surface. But through it all, the community remained strong, united in their determination to see Crow brought to justice. And when the day of the trial finally arrived, they were ready. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation and emotion. And as Evelyn took the stand, her voice steady and clear, she knew that she carried the hopes and dreams of an entire town on her shoulders. She spoke of the horrors that Crow had inflicted, of the lives he had shattered and the innocence he had stolen. She painted a picture of a monster, a man without conscience or remorse, who had preyed on the most vulnerable among them. But she also spoke of hope, of the resilience and strength of the survivors, of the power of a community united in the face of evil. And as she spoke, she watched as the jury's faces hardened, as the weight of the evidence against Crow grew more and more damning. In the end, the verdict was swift and unanimous. Guilty on all counts, a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. And as the courtroom erupted in cheers and tears, Evelyn felt a sense of relief wash over her, a feeling of justice served and a community healed. But even as they celebrated, Evelyn knew that their work was far from over. The scars of Crow's crimes would linger long after he was gone, the pain and trauma he had inflicted a lasting legacy. But she also knew that they would face it together, that the strength and resilience of their town would see them through whatever lay ahead. And as she looked out at the faces of the survivors, at the hope and determination shining in their eyes, she knew that they had already won the most important battle of all. The battle for their future, for a world where monsters like Vincent Crow could never again prey on the innocent, where hope and justice would always prevail in the end. In the weeks and months that followed Crow's conviction, the town began to rebuild. The scars left by his crimes would never fully heal, but slowly, day by day, they began to reclaim what had been lost. For the survivors, the road to recovery was long and difficult. The trauma they had endured had left deep wounds, both physical and emotional. But with the support of their loved ones and the unwavering commitment of the community, they began to heal. Evelyn watched with pride as the town came together, as neighbors reached out to one another with acts of kindness and compassion. In the face of unspeakable evil, they had chosen to respond with love, with a fierce determination to build a better world for their children. And at the center of it all was the community center, a once-abandoned building that had been transformed into a beacon of hope and healing. It was here that the survivors gathered, sharing their stories and drawing strength from one another. Evelyn spent long hours at the center, working alongside the staff and volunteers to provide support and resources to those in need. She watched as the children played and laughed, their eyes bright with a newfound sense of safety and security. And she knew that this was what it was all for. This was why she had fought so hard and sacrificed so much. To give these children a chance at a better future, to ensure that they would never again know the fear and pain that Crow had inflicted upon them. But even as the town healed, Evelyn knew that the fight was far from over. Crow may have been behind bars, but there were others like him out there, predators lurking in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike. And so, she redoubled her efforts, working tirelessly to strengthen the town's defenses and to build a network of support and protection for the most vulnerable among them. She trained new officers, forged partnerships with neighboring communities, and poured her heart and soul into making their town a safer, stronger place. It was a daunting task, a battle that would never truly be won. But Evelyn knew that it was a fight worth fighting, a cause that she would dedicate her life to. And as she looked out at the faces of the survivors, at the hope and determination shining in their eyes, she knew that they would never stop fighting, never stop working to build a better world for themselves and for generations to come. For in the end, that was what it was all about. Not just justice served or a monster vanquished, but the power of a community united in the face of darkness, the strength of the human spirit to overcome even the most unimaginable odds. And as the sun set on another day in their small town, Evelyn knew that they had already won the most important battle of all, the battle for hope, for a future where love and compassion would always triumph over fear and hate, a future that they would build together, one day at a time, with the unwavering determination and resilience that had seen them through the darkest of times and into the light of a new dawn. As the years passed, the town continued to heal and grow, the scars of Crow's crimes fading into memory. The survivors, once broken and traumatized, had emerged stronger and more resilient than ever before. Evelyn watched with pride as they went on to lead fulfilling lives, pursuing their dreams and making a difference in the world around them. Some became advocates, using their voices to raise awareness about the issues of child abuse and exploitation. Others became mentors, guiding the next generation with wisdom and compassion. And at the heart of it all was the community center, a thriving hub of activity and support. It had expanded over the years, offering a wide range of programs and services to those in need. There were counseling sessions and support groups, art and music therapy, and educational programs that empowered survivors to take control of their own lives. And there were mentorship programs, pairing adult survivors with children who had experienced trauma, helping them to heal and grow together. Evelyn often found herself at the center, marveling at the incredible work being done there. She saw the transformative power of compassion and understanding, the way that simple acts of kindness could change lives and reshape futures. And she knew that none of it would have been possible without the unwavering support of the community, without the love and commitment of so many who had stepped up in the face of unimaginable darkness. But even as the town thrived, Evelyn knew that their work was far from over. The fight against child abuse and exploitation was a never-ending battle, one that required constant vigilance and unwavering dedication. And so, she continued to lead the charge, working tirelessly to strengthen the town's defenses and to build a network of support that extended far beyond their borders. She spoke at conferences and rallies, sharing her story and the lessons she had learned, inspiring others to take up the fight. And through it all, she drew strength from the incredible resilience and courage of the survivors, from the unbreakable bonds of love and support that had seen them through the darkest of times. For Evelyn knew that it was in those bonds that the true power lay, in the ability of a community to come together in the face of evil, to choose love and compassion over fear and hate. And as she looked out at the faces of the survivors, at the hope and determination shining in their eyes, she knew that they would never stop fighting, never stop working to build a better world for themselves and for generations to come. As the years turned into decades, the town continued to evolve and grow, shaped by the love and resilience of its people. The survivors, once defined by their trauma, had become leaders and healers, guiding their community with wisdom and grace. Evelyn, now retired from the force, remained a constant presence in their lives, a source of strength and support for all who knew her. She had become a beloved figure in the town, a symbol of the unwavering commitment to justice and compassion that had seen them through the darkest of times. And on a warm summer day, as the sun danced through the leaves of the old oak tree in the center of town, Evelyn found herself surrounded by the faces of those she loved, those she had fought so hard to protect. They had gathered to celebrate her birthday, to honor the woman who had given so much of herself to their community. There were tears and laughter, stories shared and memories revisited. And as Evelyn looked out at the sea of faces before her, she felt a warmth and gratitude that words could never fully express. For in each and every one of them, she saw the incredible strength and resilience that had carried them through the darkest of times. She saw the survivors, once broken and lost, now thriving and whole. She saw the children, once vulnerable and afraid, now confident and strong. And she saw the community, once shattered by fear and trauma, now united in love and hope. And in that moment, Evelyn knew that the battle had been worth it, that the sacrifices she had made and the pain she had endured had all been for a purpose greater than herself. For in the end, it was not about the monsters they had faced or the justice they had served. It was about the love they had shared, the bonds they had forged, and the incredible resilience of the human spirit. And as the sun began to set on that perfect summer day, Evelyn knew that their story was far from over. For as long as there were those who would prey on the innocent, as long as there were those who would choose fear and hate over love and compassion, their work would never be done. But she also knew that they would never stop fighting, never stop working to build a better world for themselves and for generations to come. For in the end, that was the true legacy of their town, the enduring message of hope and resilience that would echo through the ages. A reminder that even in the face of the darkest evil, the light of love and compassion would always shine through. And as Evelyn looked out at the faces of those she loved, at the hope and determination shining in their eyes, she knew that they would carry that light forward, now and forever. As the sun set on Evelyn's birthday celebration, she found herself reflecting on the long and winding road that had brought them to this moment. She thought of the pain and trauma they had endured, the battles they had fought, and the incredible strength and resilience that had seen them through it all. And as she looked out at the faces of those she loved, she knew that their journey was far from over. For even as they celebrated the progress they had made and the healing they had achieved, they knew that the fight against darkness and evil was a never-ending one. But Evelyn also knew that they were ready for whatever lay ahead, that the bonds of love and support that had sustained them through the darkest of times would continue to guide them forward. And so, as the night wore on and the stars began to shine, Evelyn found herself making a silent promise to herself and to all those she held dear. A promise to never stop fighting, to never give up hope, and to always stand tall in the face of fear and hate. For she knew that it was in moments like these, in the quiet spaces between the battles and the triumphs, that the true strength of their community shone through. It was in the laughter of children playing in the park, in the gentle touch of a loved one's hand, and in the unwavering commitment to justice and compassion that had become the very heart and soul of their town. And as Evelyn looked out at the sea of faces before her, she felt a sense of peace and purpose wash over her. For she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, no matter what darkness they might face, they would face it together, united in love and hope. And in that moment, she knew that they had already won the most important battle of all. The battle for the soul of their community, for the very future of their world. A future that they would build together, one day at a time, with the unwavering determination and resilience that had seen them through the darkest of times and into the light of a new dawn. And as the night gave way to morning and the sun began to rise once more, Evelyn knew that their story was just beginning, that the legacy of hope and healing they had forged would endure long after they were gone. For in the end, that was the true power of their town, the enduring message of love and compassion that would echo through the ages. A reminder that even in the face of the darkest evil, the light of the human spirit would always shine through, guiding them forward into a brighter tomorrow. As the years turned into decades and the decades into generations, the story of Evelyn Carter and the town that had stood united in the face of evil became a part of their collective history, a legend passed down from parent to child, from teacher to student. It was a story of hope and resilience, of the incredible power of the human spirit to overcome even the darkest of odds. And it was a story that continued to inspire and guide them, long after those who had lived it were gone. For the survivors, now grown and with families of their own, the legacy of that time lived on in the love and compassion they showed to others, in the unwavering commitment to justice and healing that had become the very core of their being. They passed on the lessons they had learned to their children and grandchildren, teaching them the value of community and the importance of standing up for what was right, even in the face of great adversity. And in the town itself, the spirit of that time lived on in the very fabric of their lives. The community center, once a beacon of hope and healing, had grown and expanded over the years, becoming a hub of activity and support for all who needed it. There were programs for survivors and their families, resources for those struggling with trauma and abuse, and a network of volunteers and advocates who worked tirelessly to ensure that no child would ever again suffer at the hands of a monster like Vincent Crow. And at the heart of it all was the memory of Evelyn Carter, the woman who had fought so hard and sacrificed so much to bring justice and healing to their town. Her legacy lived on in the park that bore her name, in the statue that stood tall in the center of town, and in the countless lives she had touched and transformed. For Evelyn had shown them the true power of hope and resilience, the incredible strength of the human spirit to overcome even the darkest of odds. And as the town continued to grow and thrive, as new generations took up the mantle of leadership and service, they knew that her spirit would always be with them, guiding them forward into a brighter tomorrow. For in the end, that was the true legacy of Evelyn Carter and the town that had stood united in the face of evil. A legacy of hope and healing, of love and compassion, and of the enduring power of the human spirit to triumph over darkness and despair. And as the sun rose on a new day and the laughter of children filled the streets once more, they knew that her light would always shine upon them, a beacon of hope and inspiration for generations to come. For in the end, that was the true gift that Evelyn Carter had given them, the enduring message of resilience and strength that would guide them forward, now and forever. And as they looked to the future with hope and determination, they knew that they would always carry her legacy with them, a shining example of the incredible power of the human spirit to heal, to grow, and to triumph in the face of even the darkest of odds.